Yes,
This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast. And I hope you're sitting comfortably today, everybody, because I would like to welcome back to our global community somebody who, if you've been an avid fan from the very beginning, season one, 2020, you'll know that we've had this guest on before. But actually, if you've been following me on LinkedIn, you'll know that I had the absolute honour and pleasure of calling this particular gentleman my online husband, my actual real broadcast husband. I'm not sure whether that makes him an ex because we've not done it for years now, but without further ado, welcome back today, Ian Knowlson. How are you?
I'm very, very good, Alicia Holmes. How are you?
I'm really wonderful, and I'm so sorry that it's taken so long to get you back on because I think it's probably down to me and my horrendous availability for recording slots, but I'm so grateful for you doing this because I know how exceptionally busy you are. Now, there might be people, can you believe it, that don't know who you are and what you do. You're obviously a Ned if they go and look on your LinkedIn, but just give us a brief potted history as to what you do in the recruitment industry.
Okay, so next month on the 18th of March, I will have been in recruitment 40 years.
Wow. Well, do you know what? We're going to make sure that's the date it goes out. Carry on. 40 years. You don't look a day older than 40.
Oh, I love you. I love you.
You don't. You look
Work,
well.
I love you very much, work wife.
I
Although Joe Gregory will tell you that I'm a
know.
bigamist.
But do you know, that's why I decided to go for the online wife rather than work wife, because I know Joe Gregory is firmly your work wife. That's amazing. 40
So,
years.
anyway, yeah, so 40 years, of which the last 14, 15, I'm in my 15th year, I've been doing what I do now, which is basically coaching people, individuals, leadership, working with businesses to grow them. And since the pandemic and video conferencing going, global, I have people all over the world.
Yep.
And as we were just talking about offline, I've just come back from Australia and Japan, where I saw a few people there, and in the summer I was in Canada delivering stuff. So yeah, I work with people all over the world, and I love it. It's fascinating. It really is a global community, the world of recruitment.
It really,
I know you've had Greg Savage on in recent weeks, and you've got other people, and we all kind of know each other, right? Bump into each other. So that's what I do, and yeah, I mean, the other little things is I'm on the representative committee of APSCO in the UK, so that's very interesting. I get to read about industry data,
yep.
hear about what's happening, so I've really, really got my finger on the pulse there. And Analytica quoted me as a, I don't know, global influencer on the future of work. So that's my pet passion in our
I
industry. So
love it.
quick
And
summary about
that's why I needed you back on because I think if I think just about this podcast and our community over the last 5 years, we have evolved. And people often, when they send me thank you messages, which by the way, anyone that does that and takes time to do that, I just think, wow, you've got gorgeous, gracious manners. Thank you so much because we know that you're listening. They often comment and use the term thought leadership. And I often think it's one of those oversubscribed terms that people say all the time and describe themselves as. And I think somebody like yourself, you really are what I would say an industry specialist. You are a thought leader because of all the things you've said. And I think today's topics for me are so critical for the leaders that listen. And I know that it's so hard to know exactly who your listeners are, but very often that's the swathe of thank you emails tends to be from leaders. So I think that's the kind of focus for today. But don't turn off if you're not a leader, because I think that what Ian is going to share today will still be really important because we are going to talk around AI and innovation. We are going to talk very specifically as well, I think, around business development. So please stick around. Don't think this isn't for you. But I hope you've still clicked on it, even though it's very leadership led. So I guess my opening gambit to somebody with the amount of experience and agnostic insights that you have from a data perspective from APSCO and from your privileged position and well-earned position as an ed and board advisor is what are the key trends? I would say five's always a nice number if you can get to five that leaders should and need to be focusing on, whether that's investment, whatever that looks like for the next year ahead.
okay. Well, I think the most important thing to talk to anyone who's a leader of a recruitment company right now is if you haven't started already to look at artificial intelligence and how it's going to affect our industry, or is already affecting our industry, then you're already behind the curve. I used to work for Hayes, as you know, I was a director of Hayes,
Mhm.
and I spoke to an ex-colleague yesterday who no longer works for them, and she's currently involved in a procurement exercise for a major multinational to get somebody to manage their recruitment processes for the next 3 years. And she was telling me stuff about AI that people are already implementing, which will massively change recruitment. And I've written a blog which is going to go out. In fact, it'll be out, by the time this podcast gets released.
It'll
And
be in the
that's
show notes. We'll make sure the link's there in the show notes so people can click on it. As soon as you've listened to this, you can just go and
yeah.
click on read that blog.
So that's about AI and leadership. And what I would say to anybody who is, even if you're an individual recruiter, and particularly if you're a leader, the first thing you need to do is look at AI and imagine what your business will look like and what the recruitment industry will look like in 5 years. So 2030, by then, all of this stuff will be live, it'll be implemented, it will have changed our industry.
Yep.
So the first thing, which is really positive, is there are 5 or 6 things that AI can't do. And this is your pet hobby, Leisha. It is not very good at emotional intelligence and emotional support. So if you look at what we do as recruiters, we manage the process of talking to a hiring manager, understanding what it is they look for, and talk to candidates, persuading them to look at a job, to go for interviews, to help them and coach them through that process. Now, you can support that process with technology and AI, but it's a human interaction bit. And persuasion is not one of those skills that AI yet is any good at. It will help, but it's not something that it requires you to read somebody, to understand emotionally, to build empathy with the person, to guide them on that journey. So that's a part of the process that won't change. So for me, there's a whole raft of stuff around that that does change. And you and I today are using an AI note taker to make notes on what we're doing, which is fantastic.
Exactly.
And that's one thing that every recruiter should be doing. They should talk to the candidate and say, "Excuse me, but I use an AI note taker, and do you have any problem with that?" Because we've talked about young Toby, who I work with, and Toby's a Gen Z young man. He's really into AI. He's proved himself that he can deliver his job in 1.5 days a week and use the other 3.5 days to invest in AI and stuff like that. So Toby's already doing that, and he's shown me how AI works. Everybody's using Chat GPT. If you're not, you are so far behind the curve, this is frightening for you. So so that's the first thing. You need to imagine what your business will look like. And let's start talking about some of the sectors. So if you're in education, you're in construction, you might be in senior appointments.
Okay.
If you are doing, permanent or contract, you need to think about what you do now and what the business would look like in AI.
Right.
And that to me is a really big trend. So the people that I'm talking to, the big multinationals, I will name some of them. The Execos, Manpower, Hayes, Reed, all of those sorts of business. They have got AI into their systems, into their processes. It's already there in some of their solutions that they're selling. So you are competing with them, and guess what? They can get higher productivity, which means they can find people faster, cheaper. So if we're a niche recruiter, we have to be bloody good at what we do, and we have to deliver a higher quality service. So that would be the first thing I would say, Leisha, is AI. That's a trend. And then I think it starts to sort of come off that. So growth. So one of the other key areas I would say people are looking at is building relationships.
Okay, good. That's nothing innovative though, is it really, Ian? Building
relationships. Not.
We've been doing that since the beginning of time, but I think without sounding flippant, I think it's a lost art amongst, I'm not going to say generational, but amongst those who have maybe come into the recruitment industry where it has been possible to be more transactional And actually, it's a real nice segue from AI. The reason that you will still be in the industry is because of the actual relationships you have with your clients and your candidates and your internal stakeholders too. We mustn't
Yeah.
forget.
Yeah. And I think relationships are like a raincoat or in a storm.
Okay, yeah.
If you don't have, you would never dream of going up a mountain in Britain, Ben Nevis, Snowdonia,
Yeah,
Scarfell. You wouldn't dream of going up one of those without fully equipped coats in the
true.
rain.
Good
And
knowledge.
if you have no solid client relationships, then you're in, and the storm is a recession or an economic downturn, and we're experiencing that now. There's some not good figures out there which I could quote, but I like to stay positive.
Yeah, me too.
And I've worked through, I was trying to work it out the other day, let's say 6 or 7 economic downturns in my career.
Mm.
And there's a lot of things that are different between them all, but there's an awful lot of things that are the same. And the one thing that's the same, which the key clients that I work with, the successful ones do, is you build relationships.
Absolutely.
And I can illustrate this. If you go back 4 years when, it was no difficult to get a job. Sorry, if you're a recruiter to find a job to resource to for a client, then what used to happen was your clients, you'd ring and they were desperate for, I don't know, a data scientist. They would talk to 10 or 15 agents to get the right person
Yeah.
because they were desperate. Now, the world has changed and the number of vacancies in the UK, and this is globally, has gone down. In the UK, it's gone down from about 1.3 million at its peak about 18 months, 2 years ago, down to about 820,000
Yeah.
that are advertised. Now, you look at that, you go, wow,
Yep.
that's a shortfall of about a third.
Yep.
And we've lost between 25 and 33% of recruiters from
Correct.
our industry in the last couple of years.
Yep.
And they tend to be the ones who literally were just good at filling jobs
I know.
because they didn't know how to do BD.
Agree.
So relationships is fundamental and you need to build those, and it has to be, you have to add value. The client wants value. It's not about just finding them CVs. You have to differentiate yourself. So that would be my number 2 of those 5.
Love it. Okay. And we're going to come back to BD because I think that was a nice segue actually into what meaningful BD actually means then. Because to me, BD element is about creating that relationship in the first
It
place.
is.
It's
It
not
is.
about cold calling. Have you got any jobs? You got any jobs? Those days are long gone, aren't they? So we can come back to it or we can talk about it now if you like, if you think it's relevant.
Well, let me go on to number 3.
Okay.
Okay, which is, I think, and it's connected to BD.
Okay.
So I think what I would say is that most good recruiters right now have recognized something which, sadly we all learn the painful way, which is in every economic downturn, there are still markets that are growing
Hmm.
and there are markets that are contracting. And the successful recruiters, and I think back to some of the people that we were talking to on our show 2 or 3 years ago, when I know, don't say
Years
5 years ago. I know, 5 years ago. I think it was 4 actually.
It was. We should bring it back, but let's talk about that at the end of the show. I was
Okay.
thinking that actually. Carry on.
So anyway, and I can't remember the gentleman's name. I think it's Cromwell. Was in hospitality, and he pivoted his business overnight.
Daniel Cormel. Yeah,
Daniel Cornwell, that was
yeah,
it. That
yeah,
was it. Cromwell Cornwell. And
yeah.
Daniel pivoted his business. And that's what good recruiters do.
Mm.
I've been doing this for 40 years and I've done it. And, I don't do today what I did 40 years ago. I've had to pivot, reinvent, go back, go forward. That's what good recruiters do. That said, Leisha, I've probably personally made easily, I know, 2 or 3 million pounds in my career. Oh, we took all of the money and added it all up. Certainly, if you were to bring it into present day values,
Yeah,
you'd be saying easily over 40 years. But anyway, come back to, so the best people are doing 2 or 3 things. They're looking at the growth markets.
yeah,
I recently went on a podcast with the iIntro guys. I was
yeah,
on their retained recruiter, and I've also written a blog. And the blog is about 5 global markets that are expanding this year.
yeah.
And I'm more than happy to share that with your
Thank
listeners.
you. Yep.
And so the first one won't surprise everybody, and certainly these are all applicable for the UK. So the first one is healthcare.
Yep.
We're in aging in the Western world where recruitment is dominant, so healthcare is a big one. Education, the UK government have come in the last 6 months and they've invested in healthcare and education. So
Correct.
I'm not saying there's huge amounts of money there, but they're growth markets.
Yep.
Third one in the UK is construction
No surprises there.
and infrastructure.
Yep.
Um, and I work very closely with a number of construction recruiters, and I know that they are growing.
Absolutely.
I also work very closely with Paystream, or an umbrella business, and I work similarly closely with Simplicity. Both of those businesses supply the whole sector. So you kind of, by talking to them, have an idea what sectors are growing, what sectors
Yeah.
are contracting. So construction, and again, that won't surprise anybody because,
Yep.
the Labour government want to build 1.5 million houses, and to build
Right.
houses, you need bricks and you need, bricklayers and
Roads.
scaffolders and
Yeah.
everything. And we haven't got enough of them. So there you go. Those are two growth markets. Another one, renewable energy. Again, that's a global market, but in the UK, that's a big, big growth sector.
Yeah.
And then the fifth one, believe it or not, which surprises a lot of people, is technology. There is still a global shortage of data scientists, cybersecurity experts,
Yeah.
software engineers. And it's not as easy to get jobs there as it used to be, but it's still a
I
global
was going to
market.
say that doesn't surprise me, but obviously I'm a Rec to Rec, so I could have probably predicted most of those answers actually. And actually, I think I think I saw the show, so I already knew. So there were no spoilers from me, but that's really interesting. And I'd actually just as a little pause, if you are listening to this now, I want to know what you thought. We should have said that at the start. What would you say your guesses are? But I think technology has kind of gone through its own unique microcosm of an evolution, hasn't it? And I genuinely believe that anything in STEM is still going to be talent short. We're catching up in the education system as to which skills, and we could talk about that in a whole different podcast, the education system. But that's really insightful, and I'm really grateful for you sharing that. And I would absolutely agree on those sectors. That's not to say the ones you've not mentioned, but these are the 5 key growth ones for 2025. So your third point of pivoting, it's being innovative, it's being nimble, it's doing your research, your due diligence. This isn't about as somebody that's doing what's perceived as a dying market going, oh my God, I'm going to suddenly go and ring all the construction sites. You've got to be really strategic in it, right? If you're going to pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just give you something else for your listeners to think about. Something you can do today that you probably couldn't have done in the previous economic downturns is you can operate from the UK and place people in foreign markets.
Yeah.
Now, one of the questions that we talked about is what are the best performing clients that I work with doing? That's one of the things they're doing.
Right. Okay. Well, that's really interesting. So you're a UK entity, you're placing, I don't know, engineers into process engineering, manufacturing in the UK. You recognize that you could probably do exactly the same process into Europe, into America, but obviously get much higher value fees. What do they need to do? Do they need to set up a business over there, or can they manage it all from here?
Well, I've seen lots of models, and the most successful model, the one that requires the least amount of risk, is to create a team based in the UK operating. Let's take East Coast America, okay? Because that's if you're going to America, that's where you go first. So
Yeah.
let's East Coast America.
Yeah.
If you were going to go into renewables, you'd probably go down towards the Gulf, but technology, finance sector, East
Yeah.
Coast America, you would have a team of people based in, and I know a company that's done this in Manchester.
Yeah.
Put a team of 4. They came into work at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
They finished work at 8 o'clock Monday to Thursday,
Yeah.
finished at 5 o'clock Friday, kept their phones on, didn't go out drinking too heavily before 7:30 on a Friday night because you could still get your North American clients ringing you.
Yeah.
They were placing people in permanent jobs and contractors. If you place people in contractors, the umbrella companies in the UK will be able to support that.
Yeah.
Paystream definitely can. And if you talk to the guys there and tell them I recommend it, I can give you. In fact, somebody drops me a message, I'll introduce you.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
You don't have to worry about paying your worker. Again, people like Simplicity for the right reasons will probably support your growth into international markets. So you can get some of your money back quite quickly.
Yeah.
So that's what people are doing. Let me give you a figure. that might shock some people.
Okay.
In fact, I'll ask you the question. What do you think the average fee is, let's say in life sciences and technology, for a permanent placement in North America? Let's say East Coast America.
25K.
It is 25, it's $35,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know of recruiters in the US, I know a number of them who generated between $500,000 and $1 million a year.
Yeah, I do know my stuff and watch this space. Key recruitment might be going international. So I might be utilizing your knowledge and prowess on that. Not me. I'm not doing that.
Ah,
I'm in my pajamas by 7 o'clock at night. No one wants to be doing a Zoom call with a middle-aged woman in her pajamas. But watch this space, that's all I'll say. That's
but I
really
mean, so I think people need to be looking at that. Global Britain, if we've got, if we voted for that, whether you did or didn't, it's irrelevant. That's where we are. Smell the coffee,
absolutely.
wake up and take advantage of it.
I agree.
I'm not necessarily going to slag off Mr. Trump because at the end of the day, I've got a lot of personal views on what he's doing, but I
Yeah.
have to respect the man knows his marbles, and the American economy is going to grow, and
Yeah.
it'll be one of the fastest growing
It will be.
economies in the world. And if you want to get
Yeah.
a slice of that action, there's no reason why you can't do it
Yeah.
from the UK.
Yeah.
I've got 3 or 4 clients that already do that. I know of people that set up a UK business, as I
Yeah.
say, in Manchester, then
Yeah.
moved to a WeWork in New York,
Yeah.
and there you go. Anyway, that's a freebie.
Yeah, notwithstanding all political opinions are kept at the door on this podcast, thank you very much. But I concur that the trajectory of our clients in the UK who supply to the US have also predicted the same growth potential. So I'm very pleased that that's on your list. So that was number 3. So just to confirm where we're up to, we've got the 5 key trends: AI, relationships, and pivoting and innovation. Number 4.
I thought about this long and hard, and I've decided just to stick with those 3 because I think those
Ah,
3 are
okay.
so fundamental. Anything that I came up with after that would be, I mean, I guess it's not so much a trend, but another thing that people need to be doing, which is really important, is they need to look at the employment rights bill and see how
Yes,
that's going to impact their business.
thank
But
you.
I don't see that as a growth. I see it as a defensive thing. So if
Yes.
you're looking to continue to grow your business,
Yeah.
those first 3 things are so important. Because I think if you don't do those 3 things, you won't have a business in 5 years. That's
I agree with you. And actually, it
powerful.
it almost simplifies it, but everything that you've said there is well within the control of the leader listening now to make the changes now. I think that anyone that hasn't already investigated what elements of their business they can outsource to automation, you're crazy. And then it allows you to then ergo focus on the relationships and the bits of the job that you want to enjoy. And look, there's no question that as an industry we are leaning up. We're already doing it. We're already seeing it. You and I have seen it a million times, but we're seeing that now. And then from an innovation, that's one of the key things that has kept me in love with this industry for 26 years, that we are so creative and so innovative. And, you can't do the who moved my cheese. You have to think, right, well, this isn't working now. Just because it's worked for the last 5 years doesn't mean it's going to work going forward. So I think don't be afraid of change. But at the same time, you need to be considered with it. So I love what you focused on there. Can we add an extra little one in there? Because I think, and I know it's a
Go
question
on.
that we're going to talk about, which is we've got to future proof ourselves, right? So this is all
Yeah,
fine. This is all fine. Everything you
yeah.
said is fine. But and I think it'd be a really nice way to finish because it's about a bright future for our industry. What can we do to attract diverse, inspiring,
Oh,
innovative
yes.
talent to our industry?
Well, I mean, okay. So the last 15 years, this is the bit of my job that I really enjoy, and that's working with business leaders and their teams to grow their companies.
Yep.
And the way that those successful businesses have done it is, first of all, you need to create what we call, because I'm an NLP master practitioner. We've talked about that in previous
Yep.
podcasts, and we talk about creating what we call a compelling future. So I work with businesses to create a vision, probably 3 year vision, but with the potential to go 5 years. So you create a 3 year vision, and that vision has to be so compelling that the business owners are inspired by it,
Yeah.
that the next group of people are inspired by it. I'm going to name a few clients. I worked with James and Brad from Venturi, and we're going back 7 years ago. We created a vision for their business. Brad and Jim used to keep their orbit strategic plan, which I created for them, on their wall. And when a young person came for an interview, they would see that and they would show this is where we're going.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're a leader, and it's one thing we lack on a political front, without going into politics, is we need people with vision.
Yeah,
And
agree.
that vision needs to inspire. And that has been the same forever. Now, if we then go down below that, that has to be diverse, it has to be inclusive, it has to be able to demonstrate where everybody who joins the business can go.
Yep.
So you join as a trainee over here today.
Yeah.
I want to be able to see that I can get promoted to a senior consultant, to a team leader.
Yep.
And I want to see people that started as an apprentice and get up there. There was a
Absolutely.
post yesterday, a gentleman who I don't know whether you know, I'm sure you do, but I've known him and played golf with him several times. A guy called Steve Seddon
Okay.
works for Knowlson, and he was promoting the apprenticeship scheme. And he started as an apprentice with Mawson, I think 25, 30 years ago.
Love
Might be more, but I don't want to upset Steve. And
it.
Steve is now a sales director. I think he's a key accounts director of Mawson.
Right.
That's the kind of thing. But I can go through lots and lots of other people like that. And I think that's how we inspire people. We show them this is the route they can go down.
Yeah.
And if anyone feels differently, I'd love to hear it. I mean, these are my ideas, and I'd love somebody to come back and, when this podcast goes live, I would love it for people to come in and challenge me and you. But if without inspiration, without a vision, you're never going to bring those people on board. I don't
I think, and I think this is such a beautiful, and it would be remiss not to talk before we finish about BD. I just want to finish that as a kind of stick our flag in the sand about segueing everything that we've talked about. But I think what makes a remarkable recruiter and one that is future proof is one that can tell a story. Our storytelling
Yeah,
capability is what will define us and
yeah,
what will make us stand out on LinkedIn. It's what will make us memorable to any of our stakeholders, whether that's a client candidate
absolutely.
or a potential employee. If we're trying to attract new talent, how you tell your story and what you've just said there, I think is the journey. The journey through your business is so inspiring. Now I really like that. So
Do you know why? Do you know why storytelling works?
because it's the oldest human art that there is.
Well, it is, but I'll explain it to the listeners. So every human being, healthy human being over the age of 11, has something called a critical faculty.
Mm-hmm.
My good friend Google Dave calls it the bullshit monitor. And it's on in the background all the time, listening to what people say. It's why most young children at around 10, 11, 12
Yeah.
stop believing in the tooth fairy, the Easter bunny, and Father
It's
Christmas.
not
I
real.
know,
Oh,
I know.
Ian!
That's just destroyed half your
Ruined
audience.
it.
I know that. I know. Okay. But the reality is, that's what it's there for. Now, we as salespeople are constantly coming up against individual people's critical faculty. When you're selling to someone as a trainer, I deal with it all the time. So stories are really beautiful. And the most compulsive people in the world, the greatest leaders, sometimes not necessarily the nicest leaders, but if we go for, the most inspirational leaders, whether it's, Jesus himself, Muhammad, some of the guys from Buddhism, Sanskrit, some of the stories. I've just come back from Japan. The stories there, the great storytellers inspire. That's how they
Yeah,
do it. And vision, corporate vision, is a story. It's a story about what we're going to do in the future.
it
So there
really,
you go.
it really.
Anyway, you want to
Before
know about BD?
before we finish, we're running out of time. Tell me, what does BD actually mean? And if you're going to leave one piece of wisdom to recruiters that are being asked to do that, what would it be?
Wow. Okay, what does BD mean? Business development is about building relationships. We said it earlier.
Yeah,
Okay. And in order for relationships to work, it has to be a two-way street.
yeah,
And if you, as the salesperson, approach a client with what is in it for you as the salesperson, the door will be shown to you straight away.
yeah. I'm
So
shaking
what you
my head.
have to do is you have to show value.
Yep.
And I don't know, I've heard this several times, but I think one of the best books I read many years ago was Cold Calling for Chickens by Bob Etherington. And he reckons that 5% of salespeople get 85% of the business because they make 6 or 7 calls.
Yep.
Because on the first call, 50% people give up. The second call, another 20% give up. And it goes so on and so forth.
Yeah,
On
yeah.
the sixth call, only 5% make the sixth call, but they get 80% of the business. But in those 6 calls, you have to show value.
Do.
And again, that's what we as coaches and trainers do. That's how we help people build those value added processes.
Of
That's
course.
why, that's why I got a job.
It is why
Even
you've got a job.
even in the toughest economic market we've probably had for 10, 15 years. Yeah, probably going back to 2008.
Yep.
My phone doesn't stop ringing, and
He
I'm
means 2008, not 1908 for anyone that's not.
I tell
Uh,
you what I'll do. I tell you what I'll do. Um, if if they come via you, I am more than happy to give an hour's free consultation to 5 of
wow.
your listeners. There you
Right.
go.
In order to curate that fairly, if that is something that appeals to you, and oh my God, I can't believe you just done that. Are you sure?
Yeah,
Please message the Recruitment podcast page on LinkedIn, and our top 5 people, we will introduce you to Ian. And that's a bona fide offer. That is absolutely amazing. I might have to cheat and put myself in that. I'm only joking. I just want to really make sure I summarize that accurately. That, and this is what I've seen it, I've heard it, I hear this through feedback from leaders, that the biggest shift of mindset you can have as a person that's being asked to or needing to BD, because let's face it, the last few years you might not needed to do it, but you definitely need to now. It's not what's in it for you. It's not about you. So shift and reframe that whole who's this for? This is about creating and identifying that need for your client and your customer, and you're then going to solve that problem. And it's such an easy thing to do. And once you switch that mindset, it'll take away all the fear of business development. If you're a curious person anyway, that was, as I knew it would be, absolute gold dust. And there's been a lot of people that we've mentioned there, so I hope we remember to tag them all in our post. But if you've liked what you've heard with Ian, there's a number of blogs on there available to you. You're very prolific anyway on appearing on lots of shows and everything, but please remember to mention the podcast when you drop Ian a message. And maybe we need to talk offline about us getting the work wife and hubby back together. We might have to
well,
talk about that.
get your diary out afterwards, and we'll see what we can do.
No, well, it's creating a compelling future for our future recruiters. That's all I can say. Ian, you have been a legend. Thank you for joining us on the
Thank you.
Recruitment podcast. Thank you.